Okay, get this. We're talking about a story about a man who was murdered, except he was very much alive. It's one of the most bizarre and honestly shocking cases in legal history, and it really makes you question what justice is all about.
It sounds like a trick question, right? A total paradox. But this isn't some hypothetical classroom debate. This was the unbelievable reality at the center of a case that absolutely rocked the Indian legal system.
13 years. Just let that sink in. A whole chunk of their lives was gone, spent trying to fight a murder conviction for a crime that, as you'll see, never even happened in the first place. This is that story. So, the big question is, how on earth did 5 men get convicted for a murder with no victim? Well, it all started with what the prosecution claimed was a pretty straightforward open and shut case. The prosecution laid out a simple story. There was a land dispute, a man named Nachhattar Singh goes missing, a week later his dad reports it, then 2 years go by, and bam! With what looked like solid evidence, 5 men are found guilty of his murder. Seemed pretty clear-cut. But here's the thing. That whole rock-solid case, it was a complete house of cards, just built on a foundation of lies. And when that case finally got to the High Court, the whole thing started to fall apart, piece by fraudulent piece. The court just went through the evidence and systematically ripped it to shreds. The so-called eyewitness statement? Made up. The body that was found? Not Nachhattar Singh. The blood on the murder weapons? It was planted, probably taken from the accused men while they were being tortured. And the motive? That land deed? It was actually created after they were arrested. The whole thing was a fiction. And this brings us to the most mind-blowing part of the story, the moment that completely shattered the entire case. For 13 long years, these men never stopped saying they were innocent. Finally, in 2009, their appeal makes it to the High Court, and their lawyers call a witness to the stand who would change absolutely everything. And who was that witness? None other than Nachhattar Singh himself, the supposed murder victim. In this unbelievable twist, he's standing in court, totally alive and well, explaining that he just ran away after an argument. I mean, his story was so simple. He had a fight, he left town, and he spent the next 10 years working different jobs with no idea that back home, 5 guys had been convicted of killing him. His simple truth just blew apart this incredibly malicious and complicated lie. So faced with this catastrophic breakdown of the justice system, the High Court didn't just free the men. It took 4 really big steps to try and make things right and to hold the people responsible accountable for what they did. The court's reaction was fast and powerful. First, obviously, the men were immediately acquitted, but they didn't stop there. The court ordered perjury charges against 14 people, including the police officers involved. They threw out a bogus police inquiry and, critically, they took steps to deal with the incredible suffering these innocent men had endured.
Yeah. Let's not forget the real human cost here. Every single one of these men spent 5 years in prison. 5 years of their lives branded as murderers for a crime that literally never even happened.
And the tragedy? It gets even worse. The psychological damage was just unbearable. After being let out on bail, still living with this life sentence hanging over his head, Nachhattar Singh's son Sira took his own life. That's a consequence you can never undo. So, to acknowledge this immense harm, the court ordered the state to pay each of the accused 20 lakh rupees, that's 2 million rupees in compensation. Now at the time, this was a huge amount, a really powerful statement about just how precious liberty is.
You see, this case wasn't just about getting justice for these 5 men. The court's decision set a massive legal precedent, one that really strengthened the rights of all citizens against the power of the state.
The whole judgment is built on this one fundamental right, Article 21 of the Indian Constitution. It's the core guarantee that you have a right to life and personal liberty, and it's your main protection against the state acting unlawfully.
The court's logic was crystal clear. When police and prosecutors just invent a case out of thin air, they are directly violating that fundamental right. And since these officials work for the state itself is responsible for what they did.
And to hold the state financially accountable, the court used a really powerful legal idea called strict liability, which has huge implications for all of our rights. Basically, what strict liability means is that the victim doesn't have to prove that the state meant to cause harm or it was just being sloppy. The simple fact that their fundamental right was violated by state officials is enough. The harm itself is the trigger. It puts all the pressure on the state to get things right. In the end, the Nachhattar Singh case leaves us with this really tough question. The court's judgment gave one answer: the state has to pay. But it's also a chilling reminder of the immense, and sometimes irreversible, human price of a lie.